Hi, Nat. It's so nice to have you here to do our first interview together. I'm so excited to be sharing this information with our followers, just so that they know how we met. I met Nat through Instagram. I was on Instagram. I got totally drawn in by her engaging posts, sharing a lot of valuable information around nutrition. And so we connected on Instagram. I shared what I was dreaming of doing here, interviewing several wellness professionals over time. And we're kickstarting with Nat. And Nat, maybe you can give a little bit of an introduction as to who you are and what you do and how you got there.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me on. I was really excited when you kind of chatted about your ideas, about really talking about all of these different topics that are around health and wellness, especially for women who are professional and are working and just have a very busy kind of lifestyle. So making these topics more accessible and also just out there because it's so important to talk about. A little bit about me. I am a holistic nutritionist. I work with really all ages, starting from even before first period. I have a background in youth work. So I do have a special interest in like youth and children. But I tend to work between like 13 all the way till like menopause. So there's a really big kind of age range there. But the youth is very near and special to my heart. And just really talking about food and body and holding space for that healthy relationship. Sometimes kind of diet culture out there has been very restrictive, and I kind of want to be a voice out there to help you get to your goals, right? Like whether it's weight management, feeling just better in your body, if there's any health concerns out there that do require nutrition and kind of wellness to be observed a little bit more, to do so in a way that's compassionate and empathetic, so that it doesn't feel like, I can't do anything, I can't eat anything anymore. So kind of taking on that approach within the nutrition world, which has been exciting.
That's wonderful, Nat. I totally believe that if we have a sustainable way of nourishing our body, mind, and soul, we will be consistent with it. So that's wonderful. So let me start with the first question.
Yeah.
We decided to make this topic about gut health because it is fundamental to our well-being. Why is it so important? Share a little bit about the reasons why gut health is important.
Yeah. It's hard to kind of narrow down. I think that when we really start looking at what the gut does, that it really impacts our bodies in so many ways that we don't even actually realize. So we usually think of like our gut, right? And when we're talking about gut, it's all our whole digestive system. So from the moment we put food in our mouth to when it's excreted out, that is all the gut. So usually we're thinking of when we eat food, the food is digested, we take nutrients from it, and then that's kind of it. Then it just gets like taken out of our body, and then that's end of story. But there's so much more in there. There's a lot of new research out there about like the microbiome in the gut, and gut bacteria and the way in which that impacts, immune systems, our hormonal health, mood regulation. Our gut and mood is such a big thing that's being studied. So there's so many exciting things out there, and really trying to understand that the foods that we eat, the ways in which we're eating the food, the types of food that we're eating, right? Like all of these little things that maybe we're not pausing and being mindful about have a big impact on our health. Um, and can really make a difference for people who have like autoimmune diseases, who have a lot of like allergies and food sensitivities, who maybe feel like, they're very low energy, their lack of motivation, or maybe they're just like, they feel like their body is kind of out of whack and imbalance, and they're like, what can I do? And I think that when we talk about gut health and in terms of nutrition, it's the one thing that you kind of have that like control over. You dictate what you eat. And so it can be an empowering journey to see slowly the progress of something that feels like I had no control over this, but just changing the types of foods that you gravitate towards can make a big difference in all of those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. So I heard it could support our immune system, our hormonal balance, and our mood, our emotional and mental states. And so, would you say those are the most common digestive issues, or are there other ones outside of that? You mentioned autoimmune, menopause, and energy. What other potential common digestive issues are there?
Yeah. So that is common. I think a lot of people now more than ever, and especially women, autoimmune diseases are something that a lot of us really struggle with. And some of us may not even know it, but I also think of other things that are not maybe as severe, but things like constipation, right? It's like we
Right.
should be going to the washroom at least once a day.
Right.
And it shouldn't feel like a struggle. And your stool, right? We're talking about poo, but your stool shouldn't be like a struggle to like come out and like, the color, consistency, all those good things.
Yeah.
Those things matter because it's a reflection of your health, of how well your gut is actually working. Um,
Yeah.
there's there's also things like acid reflux, right? Like it's something that you think is just like a normal thing, but like that's stomach acid coming out of the stomach all the way through the esophagus and up that can cause over long-term damages, not just like your teeth, but also like the lining of like your throat.
Oh, that's
So,
interesting.
so there's things of just to kind of be aware of that that is not necessarily normal.
Right.
There's a muscle there actually that kind of it's a flap that comes down and open when
Yeah.
we're eating food to keep the stomach acid in there. So if you're finding that you get a lot of acid reflux, then something is not working right. Maybe you have too much stomach acid, or the types of food is just causing a lot of inflammation. And then something else that a lot of women kind of deal with and that I've heard a lot is IBS.
Mhm.
So IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and that can be food related, but it can also a lot of times be stress.
Right.
Um, so it can be kind of exasperated by all of these lifestyle things that are going on as well. And that as well, like having to run to the washroom after having a meal, or like you have something small and all of a sudden your stomach is upset. Like no one should have to live that way. And I find that these things, aside from what we talked before,
Yeah.
are more and more common. And even though they're common, doesn't mean that they are normal or that someone should have to kind of live their day like that.
Right. Yes. And I many years ago when I was going through a life transition, I experienced IBS and it was all stress related. As soon as I learned to cope with my stress and I dealt with that life issue, it went away.
Yeah.
It's incredible that connection between the gut and the mind, how powerful it is. Fabulous. That's very insightful. And so, if you were to go to the root causes, you mentioned IBS could be stress related. What about the other issues, like the root causes of, say, constipation? And I'm also used to talking about the color and texture of my poop with my NDs and my nutritionist. So, what would you say are the root causes of, say, constipation or acid reflux? IBS, you talked about it could be related to stress. Is there a stress component to the other um, issues you mentioned?
Yeah. So I think that stress is something that we need to be taking seriously, right? Like when we think about our stress hormones, which is a regular response to just things that happen. So our body releases cortisol just automatically as a response, but chronically, that does cause a lot of inflammation in our body because it's an immune response,
Right.
right? So if we are constantly in a state of alert, constantly creating more inflammation, that is going to cause a lot of stress on our body and on our systems. So knowing how to kind of manage that and not just like, going to therapy, like having support, connecting with yourself, having self-care tools is super important. but as well as, diet and exercise
Yes.
and the things that are going to nourish you more at a cellular level. When we think about diet, it's like, are you eating enough of everything?
Right.
And I always kind of go back down to the macros. Like, are you getting enough fiber so that you're not constipated?
Right.
Is that maybe the reason?
Yeah.
Are you getting enough healthy fats? Because that's also really important for our stool and then also for our mental health so that we feel like we can handle things, like we feel more resilient. The omegas are super important. And then our carbs, like we need energy and we need consistent energy throughout the day. So if we're having not enough meals, then yes, we're going to feel like super unmotivated and low energy because
Mhm.
your body doesn't have more to give. And if we're maybe choosing foods that are not as nourishing or as balanced, that we're going to have like blood sugar spikes and then super drops. And
Right.
then you're going to feel like a up and then down, which is a
Right.
low mood, which is also super important. Then we talk about like the gut bacteria and the gut like microbiome. And that is also really important to think about. And think about how the foods, are we having enough like probiotics, prebiotics, fiber, all of these things that feed the bacteria in our gut that again relate to immune health, that relate to mental health as
Yeah.
well. And then also just the way in which our body is able to properly digest food is all very important. And like I was reading or I saw this documentary not that long ago, but we have more bacteria on our body than we have cells. So there's like
Wow.
trillions of like
Wow.
microbes like living like on us. And we have kind of this like, feedback loop relationship because they help us and then we help them survive. So it's really important to kind of acknowledge these things of like pH and like again, like what is feeding into the bacteria, but is not causing too much of a certain bacteria because it's kind of like a Goldilocks. There needs to be balance in all of this. And that can also be something that can kind of affect all of these things. And also sometimes it's kind of outside of your control. Sometimes it's more you need intervention from an ND or from your doctor because there are things that nutrition or lifestyle is not going to be able to change. And you do need more of, another sort of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Um, just
Support.
intervention and
Yeah.
support
Support. Yeah.
to be able to deal with other things, right? Like if there's severe nutrient deficiencies, yes, you can start eating the foods, but if your body needs certain things like right now or
Mhm.
yesterday, then like having supplementations, going in for like injections and just like boosts and things like that is going to be really helpful, as well
Yes.
as if it's hormonal, sometimes yes, food is very supportive, but sometimes you also need more of like hormonal interventions as well. And that is something that you would need to really discuss with your ND, get proper blood testing to make sure that in that way you're kind of like
Mhm.
in the best place.
Yes, it's interesting you mentioned that because many years ago I would say I was in my early 30s, I was a very athletic person and all of a sudden I was starting to feel really tired and very achy. And it was so unusual for me that I went to my doctor and I said, I think I'm missing something. Let's do a panel. And we did. Thank goodness she was very, very cooperative. And I also have always had an ND and an MD together, like working together. And so we did it, and I was severely vitamin D deficient. Like there's that range of vitamin D. I was almost to zero. And it took us a year to find the right supplement to
Yeah.
continue testing every 3 months to make sure I was at the right dose. Because with vitamin D, you have to be careful not to damage the kidneys. So finally, I'm at 5,000 international units of vitamin D, and I test myself every year to make sure I'm in the middle of the range.
Yeah.
So it is something that I have to supplement. Sun therapy didn't do it for me. My skin just it doesn't process. It just doesn't work like it would, say, with some people. But apparently it's a very common deficiency.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially going into the winter.
You're right.
Those seasonal depression, right? Like vitamin D is very important for hormonal health and also for mental health. So it's a good idea to go to your doctors, get that checked out,
Yeah.
especially in the winter when we don't have enough sun exposure. And a lot of us don't have a lot of vitamin D in our diet to begin with. So supplementation is usually a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's good to just also listen to our body that signals something's not like it used to be. So that's wonderful. We've covered a lot here. Now, what nutritional support would you say in each of these cases would be helpful?
Yeah. So I think that kind of more like general for all of them.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, Stress management,
Yes. Yes.
learning about balancing your meals. So making sure do you have fiber, protein, healthy fats in every single meal that you are eating is very important. Also adding a lot of variety and nutrients to your diet. So the more colors that your meals have, the more nutrients that you are getting.
Great.
And that's kind of like the baseline. Also,
Mhm.
when we're looking at lifestyle, are you getting enough sleep? Are
Yes.
you getting enough movement, right? Because when we are moving our bodies, that helps the circulation of just blood flow a lot better. And then
Great.
that also supports our digestive system to kind of like excrete things out or, be able to do the work that it does. And then also hydration. So when we're looking at things like constipation, or even IBS, like if we are constantly going to the washroom or unable to go to the washroom, maybe we're dehydrated, so we need more water in our system. And if we're constantly going to the washroom, and usually with IBS, it's kind of water just coming out, then you need to replenish that because you're going to be dehydrated from the constant going to the washroom. And then in terms of like acid reflux, it's knowing, okay, what foods and paying attention, I think with everything really is being mindful of noticing what foods kind of increase the symptoms, what makes it worse,
Yeah.
and what are some things that you're noticing that when you kind of swap out or avoid is supporting and you're noticing works a lot better for your
Mm,
body.
right.
So one of the things that I always recommend is keeping a food diary, not to control what you're eating, but to be in a state of noticing. How does your
Mhm.
body feel after you've eaten this meal? Do
Right.
you feel light? Do you feel satisfied? Do you feel like you can take on the rest of the day? Or do you feel like bloated and kind of heavy? Did it send you right to the washroom? And then you're able to slowly start picking out on foods that are maybe not supporting your body right now. And then just by taking them out of your diet, being able to take a break, see, is it your gut health? Is it your microbiome that needs a little bit more support? Do you not have enough stomach acid? Do you have allergies to specific foods that maybe you didn't have before? But now you have that information and you're able to kind of trial and error for yourself as well. Those are kind of the things that I would recommend kind of to start. I think also routine when it comes to eating is really important as well. Your body automatically starts creating, the hunger hormones, and it starts creating stomach acid even before you start eating. Yesterday, I read just the thought of food and eating actually starts creating those hormones and that process in your body. So
Yeah.
it's like if you have a routine and your body's able to adjust to that routine, you're going to set yourself up for success just in general, but especially for these, types of like symptoms, that it can make all of the difference for a lot of people.
Yes, that's so true, and I've lived it myself too. I find when I have a routine, I am more consistent, and it is becoming a natural process that, like breathing, like it's just part of my day, and that's a very empowering feeling as well,
Yeah.
because you know you're not slacking off. You're doing what's best for you. So that's wonderful. That's full of wisdom, that statement right there. So How can your consultations help somebody? Share a little bit more about how you work with your clients.
Yeah. Um, I think that one of the things that I really enjoy doing and kind of like pride myself in doing is being very person-centered. And I think that that word is kind of being thrown around a lot. But when I think of like my specific background, just in everything that I've done, I've worked in education, I've worked in special education, and being able to create plans, right? Plans of care, individualized education plans. All of these things are very specific to the individual to set them up for success. And I think that when I kind of tackle nutrition for all individuals, no matter the age, that is kind of the mindset that I come in with. So I am asking lots of different questions that people are like, I thought we were just going to talk about food, but I want to know like what your day to day looks like. I want to know what things excite you. I want to know what foods you enjoy and which ones you're like I really don't want to eat that, whether it's healthy or not. And that's okay. We all have preferences. And I think that when we kind of use those like individual differences and bring those into the plans, specifically meal plans, things that people are going to be excited about, you set them up for success.
Right.
So it's being able to work with the person instead of just being like, I'm an authority figure, like just
Right.
do what I say and you're
Yeah.
gonna get better.
Yeah.
Because you can get that information anywhere. You can
Right.
go on Google and be like, what are healthy foods? You'll get a super long list, but
Right.
that doesn't necessarily mean that one, it's gonna be sustainable. Two, that you're going to actually do it long term. And three, that it's actually going to support your body for what you need in that moment, in that life stage. And that can look very different as we're kind of going through it, especially for women. Like some people, there's like cycle syncing nutrition now. And
Yeah.
like taking that into consideration when you're like a child, when you're a teenager, when you're a young adult, when you're trying to conceive, when you're like perimenopause and into menopause, your body needs all of these different things. And it's so important to sit down and be like, where is this person at? And how can I set them up for success so that they feel encouraged to continue on this journey? Because it's work. It's work. And sometimes you have to change so many different things. And just holding space for them in that journey is kind of what I do because I want it to be sustainable. I want it to be something that they can continue on and feel empowered and feel like they're learning tools that then they can share with other people. So it's changing, one person at a time, and
That's
not to have like this grandiose like, personality, but it's like I think that if you start with one person and you're working with parents or someone who has access to other people, and then they're sharing, hey, like I learned this about food, I've changed my mindset around food, and then we start conversations that feed into a culture that is more accepting and more kinds of bodies and foods and choices. And we need a little bit more of that. So that's kind of where my practice is and the things that are really special and important to me.
That's awesome, Nat. So it's a very holistic coaching approach that you take when you're working with someone on helping them improve their nutrition and ultimately their entire life because it's so fundamental to everything. It impacts so many areas of our lives. So that's amazing. Um, Given that we're heading into the holiday season, what would you recommend for any holiday, any festivities, how to balance that out, indulging yet sustaining a healthy, balanced approach. What
Yeah.
tips can you provide?
Yeah, I think that going into the holidays, as everything I've said today, is stress management. The
Yeah.
holidays can be really exciting, but they can also be kind of stressful and really busy.
Mhm.
There's so many things going on. You have so many more events. You're expected to see so many more people, and it's like make time for yourself
Right.
to relax and rest. That would be kind of my first thing.
Okay.
The other thing is when we're talking specifically about food is go into it knowing that there is no foods off the table, right?
Hmm.
And I say that with kind of like, but if you know that certain foods just don't agree with your body, they make your stomach upset, they make you feel really bloated, it causes harm that you are recognizing, then yes, it might be something that you enjoy, but pros and cons. Is it really worth it if you know that it's not for you in that moment?
Right.
Then the other thing is a lot of us know I'm going to be eating a lot. So maybe I should fast and
Hmm.
then go to this meal and kind of like get all my calories in.
Hmm.
Please don't do that. Please continue your regular schedule, especially with your meal times. Eat like normal before you go to these events, and you're really going to support yourself in making better choices instead of making choices out of hunger. And you're going to overeat. And then if you are someone who maybe is like, I shouldn't have had that, it's going to create guilt. And then you're just going to be upset. So set yourself up for success by eating normally and not being super hungry when you're in front of all of this delicious food. And then be mindful, right? It's like, okay, there's all of these different options. Do I have a like a source of fiber? Do I have veggies in there? Or did I eat fruit? Do I have enough protein in there? And in terms of having like sweets and things like that, it's like eat your main meal first and then take a break, take a breather, and then the food will still be there. And then that way you can kind of have that pause, check in with your body. How am I feeling? And if you're feeling full in that moment, hopefully you can take it to go. If
Right.
not, there will be other opportunities as well. So just coming into it very kind. And sometimes, you might overeat and feelings of guilt might come up, and just hold yourself in compassion because, it's once the holidays come every
Mhm.
once in the year. So just being able of tomorrow's a new day, you can start again and your journey continues on. You're not starting from zero. So just being kind is my number one kind of
Oh,
tip.
I love that. Love that, Nat. Uh, wow, I'm so impressed with everything that you've shared here. I'm so glad we had this opportunity. We're going to be doing a couple more after this one. We'll figure out the timing of that. We're going to talk about food and mood, and what was the other one? We're going to talk about peri and menopause. Those are two other topics we're going to be talking about together with Nat. If somebody wanted to reach out to you, how would you, let me click this. That popped up. If somebody were to want to contact you, what would be the best way?
Yeah. I am really active on social media. So if they are on Instagram, just
Yeah.
like you found me,
Yeah.
I would definitely recommend to send me a DM or like comment in my posts. If you have any questions, I'm always happy to answer them. You can find me at Nat Osterling, which is a very long last name. It's Osterling. So you can kind of find me on there. I also have a website, which is my name, natalieosterling.ca. And you can find other kind of my email and other ways to connect with me. But I would say follow me on Instagram. I will
Awesome.
answer a lot
Awesome.
quicker.
Yes. I was so engaged by your Instagram, and we're connected on LinkedIn. So if anybody has any questions, or happy to introduce you to Nat as well. Okay, so thank you again, Nat, and I look forward to covering the other two topics with you. So I'll reach out to you to schedule those meetings.
Perfect.
All
Thank
right, thanks
you.
again. Bye.
Bye.